Conspiracy Social Club, aka Deep Waters. I recorded something this weekend.
You did?
I think my special is going to be called Buckle Up, Buttercup.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
No, you're the biggest kept secret.
I
If
am.
stand-up wise, if you want to laugh and you get to come see you,
Yeah.
that's
Outside of Clinton being gay, I'm the best kept secret.
It's 100%. And he drinks blood.
He does.
They all drink blood.
My work here is done. Mic drop, walk off.
They all drink
Should I just hitchhike out of town? Bum, 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 bum. Incredible Hulk style.
Well, my guns are so loaded with W's, and it's funny because I shot nothing but W's, and I have been shooting nothing but W's. And, it's fine. And I'm going to keep my guns holstered for now, and we'll just talk.
Brian, I have something I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
So a big kind of debate going on my Instagram right now, and it's about whether something's fascist or something is corporatocracy.
Uh-huh.
And so, Brian, I don't know if you've heard this, but BlackRock is buying up giant chunks of small family houses, like big chunks of them,
BlackRock
all over
is
the
a
country.
mortgage company.
Black is an investment firm who happens to run the Federal Reserve. Trump put them in there, and they're buying up just chunks of it. And for me, that is a form of fascism. Now, I'm getting told that's not fascism, that's corporatocracy. And I understand why you say it, but I think it's all falls under fascism, because fascism, the technical definition is basically one dictator, and corporatocracy is basically corporations taking over. But I think they're basically the same thing, in my humble opinion, because most of these dictators are.
Can I see what BlackRock, what you mean by that?
Can you look up BlackRock buying houses? Buying houses, yeah.
Because what a lot of companies will do is they'll get into these sort of REITs.
First of all, we have, and this isn't anything new. There's a new rule on this show, and there's not a lot of rules. Number one rule: never ever use Snopes. Snopes is full of shit, and we never use them. We will never click on their links as long as I'm on this show. Now, if you replace
why don't
me,
you like Snopes?
Because dude, if you actually
is it owned by the Rothschilds?
Well, no, the only thing redeeming about that guy who runs that thing is that he married a hooker. That's the only redeeming thing about him. Okay, and I think hookers need love too. But so BlackRock is buying like huge stakes in houses. Okay,
so BlackRock buy majority stake in U.S. home rentals. So BlackRock, the world's biggest. Let me see. In U.S. home rental company. Let me just brush up.
But it's also buying a bunch of.
But wait. BlackRock, the world's biggest money manager and private equity firm, KKR, have gained a majority stake in Home Partners of America, a single-family rental company backed by mortgage-backed securities pioneer Lou Ranieri. Home Partners raised capital from. This is nothing new. Reducing Ranieri's stake. According to two people familiar with the transaction, asked not to be identified because the information is private. None of this is so new, and I will say this: a lot of companies have lost their
buying large chunks of real. Ask if their Brockhouse is buying large chunks of property. Let me real estate. Yeah, see if that's coming up. Maybe chunks isn't the word, but the reason I have a big problem with this, Brian, is that. What we're seeing right now is a company that's basically in charge of our Federal Reserve.
They're not in charge of our Federal Reserve.
The guy who did it is the guy who was put in charge of the Federal Reserve.
So just so you know, when you take a government position, you have to vest all your interest in your company.
That's so cute, Brian.
You do.
Oh,
it's a law.
Brian.
It's a law.
Okay.
You do.
Brian, you're cute.
It's a law.
You're cute.
That's a law.
You're cute.
You literally cannot have.
Brian,
you cannot take.
You're telling me Dick Cheney had nothing to do with Halliburton when he was vice president?
What I'm saying is that he had to vest all his interest in it. That's all.
Okay.
That's all. That's a U.S. law.
Eyes.
That's a U.S. law.
Go back.
You're not.
To sleep.
I guarantee he's not allowed to secretly have a stake.
Oh, but he wouldn't have any incentive to help his old company out.
Well, I will say that I agree with you that someone like Dick Cheney is capable of anything.
We haven't rang the old bell in a while.
I'm not a fan of Dick Cheney.
Yeah. Well,
So I'm not going to defend
unless
him.
you're unless you're Darth Vader, you should be.
I think he's a bad guy.
So I have a real problem with this. Now
But
we
you're
have
being real general. What do you have a problem with?
Well, okay, let me continue. So then Jeff Bezos now is buying MGM. He's just got a deal for his space program for $10 billion. He's buying MGM for $8 billion. Seems kind of convenient. I'm just telling you guys.
You're just worried. You're worried about a consolidation of power by a few groups who are buying up a lot of shit. And that's legit.
I'm concerned. You know. Okay. So, Brian, do you know what fractional reserve banking is? Fractional reserve banking.
I've heard the term, but I don't know.
Okay. Basically, it's where in our government, the Federal Reserve is set up that if you, and this is no longer, and it's gotten even worse, but it used to be, if you had $1 in the bank, you could loan out $10.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So now, Brian, you don't even need $1.
Mm-hmm.
You can just loan out the money. Okay? So how does this fit into this? So now you and I are now competing against a firm that is basically through bailouts receiving fake funny money.
Right.
So let's say I want to buy a house and BlackRock wants to buy that house. They can just take this fake money.
So this is where now you're getting into a conspiracy that Lawrence my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He wrote Republic Lost. And what the hell's his name? Look up Republic Lost. He's a constitutional scholar at Harvard University. And he basically is saying, why is it that, what is his name? I want to give him credit.
Lawrence Lessig?
Yeah, Lawrence Lessig. He does an amazing job of this. What you're talking about now is the fact that these big corporations have such an influence on Washington and on how laws are passed and who they're passed for. Why? Because we know that if you're a congressman, you ain't getting elected unless you toe the line. Your donors, your fundraiser, comes to you and gives you a list of people you have to call. You're on the phone looking for money from various donors. Now, those donors have very deep pockets. Those donors happen to be companies like you're talking about, okay? If you don't do that, you ain't getting elected. And so the real power lies in about 100 fundraisers because they have all these contacts with all these big time banks. And one of the examples he uses way back was that we were going through all kinds of problems as a country. And the biggest thing being debated on the floor of the Senate, of the House, was swipe fees for banks. Swipe fees. Every time you put your ATM in, is it $250 or is it $350? Can we push it to $450? And you're not getting elected. You're not staying. You might get elected. You ain't staying in office unless you are towing the party line. Now it gets worse. Now you're a
But wait, there's worse.
Yeah, because you're a congressman. You're a congressman. Now you spend most of your time. This blew my mind, and this is not up for debate. You spend between 40 and 60% of your time as a congressman raising money. You're across the street from the Capitol because you can't do it on federal land. You're in your car and you're making phone calls to donors. Now, here's the great thing. You've got all kinds of contacts now in Washington. You've spent 2, 4, 6 years in Washington. You have contacts on Capitol Hill. Those contacts are very important. You then have been making $160,000 a year as a congressman or whatever it is. There's always, if you're good, and if you're a senator, even better, there is a seat waiting for you on what's called K Street, which is where all the lobbying firms are.
Yeah.
So now you're going to make 5 or 6 times that amount of money at a lobbying firm because you can call your buddies on Capitol Hill and in the Senate and have an outsized influence on how they vote.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, you're going to get a lot of money for this.
Yeah.
So the real issue becomes campaign finance reform. as long as corporations can give an unlimited amount of money through super PACs and stuff like that, we have an economy of influence. Washington has become an economy of influence. So why is it that when my parents lived in Potomac, to get from Potomac to the Capitol, I think is 14 miles. It takes you about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
An hour and a half, because 35,000 lawyers and lobbyists descend upon the Capitol every single day.
Yeah.
Not to mention everyone else.
Yes.
Now, the 7 counties around Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, that area, are the wealthiest counties in the Union. They don't produce anything, Sam. They don't produce anything.
Yes.
It's not like they're producing things. What they are doing is they are feeding off the public trough in one way or another. Because corporations, you're not doing business in the United States or in the world unless you have a presence in Washington.
Yes.
Unless you have influence on whether or not, because the next bank or the next group. Now, here's what banks do. They're really smart. They get together. They talk. They get together. Now they have a collective interest on how a law is passed in Washington.
Yes.
And this is the biggest problem. Now, James Madison said when he wrote the Federalist Papers, he said, don't worry, because special interests will cancel each other out. Everybody is vying for some influence.
Right.
So it'll cancel each other out. Yes, to an extent. No, though, otherwise.
Well, Brian, real quick.
Your suspicions are well placed.
Well, it's like you look at, it's like Coke and Pepsi are in competition with each other until another soda comes, and then they work together. So these special interests will fight over little things.
It's money.
But at the end of the day, most likely their mutual interest will rise above the people's interest.
There's 2 books, So Damn Much Money and Republic Lost. He said, we're losing our republic. Lawrence Lessig said on my podcast, he goes, your government does not represent you.
Not 100%.
Yeah,
Never a true
it
thing.
doesn't.
But Brian, what I'm talking about, and everything you're saying is right, but in this instance, is what I'm talking about is that our Federal Reserve, I don't think is a government institution. We can get an argument about that. That's a whole different thing. I don't even want to talk about it. Okay. But our government, the Federal Reserve is giving these banks printed fake money in which they're coming and competing with us, the citizens of this country, for property to buy. So you and I save up our money to go and buy this property. In comes BlackRock with unlimited funds, can outbid us and buy that thing from us. We're competing against our own tax dollars, and it's not even tax dollars. It's fake printed money. Do you know 25% of the money in circulation right now was printed when? In the last year.
Yeah. And that's a recipe for inflation.
We're competing against monopoly money.
Yeah.
So now I'm scrambling now. I'm talking to my brother. We're interested in buying some stuff. I got to be honest with you, man. If you listen to this, you have some money, buy property, because they are coming to buy up everything, dude. And we're got that movements where it's like, don't rent from the bankers. Don't rent houses from bankers. Starve them out, because, we saw it happen in baseball with corporations when they came in and tried to buy all of our sports teams, and they failed miserably. I mean, we can do it.
The only caveat I would say is that in the past, banks have tried this. Citibank, a lot of different banks tried to buy a lot of property with the same philosophy. Like all of us know, property dips high because you buy property in chunks in certain areas. You can try to hedge your bet and do these reaps, but for the most part, you buy property and you say, well, so let's say New York is down now. Let's buy a bunch of New York and stuff. Man, is that a gamble? A lot of banks and a lot of companies have gone bust taking that
Brian,
gamble.
the only problem I have with that theory is like they have unlimited money. Now with this,
if the government is bailing you out,
yes.
So again,
it's like
and
in crypto,
you're
right?
You're very astute here, and you're right. Remember this, guys. My problem is bankers always say they're capitalists, okay? Yeah, you guys are capitalists as long as you're winning.
Yes.
As long as you're making money,
yes.
you want to be taxed 18%. The minute you fuck up with other people's money, taxpayer money, the minute you fuck up and you now have over leveraged yourself, you go to the government to bail you out. So really, on the way up, you're a capitalist. On the way down, you're a fucking socialist. So don't tell me you believe in the free market. You don't play in the free market. You and I play in the free market. You and I have to be in the free market. We live or die by how many butts we put in the seat. It's very cut and dry for you and I. This podcast, we got to keep growing it.
Yeah.
Those motherfuckers, if things aren't going well, they call their overlords in the government, and the government goes, well, you're too big to fail. You know why you're too big to fail, American Bank of America? Because you're so ingrained in the American economy that if you fail, you're all those tributaries, all those rivers that are going into all these other, they dry up. And then those businesses die. That's what happened. They came to Bush and they said, dude, if you let Goldman Sachs and these companies go under, even though they were everybody was pretty irresponsible in general. If you do this, what's going to happen is the central nervous system of our economy, the financial system, will crumble and everything else will crumble.
That's what they want you to
Right.
believe.
Well, so they said basically it'll be worse than the Great Depression. And Bush is not an economist. And he said, and Bernanke and all those guys they made a very powerful point. I don't know if they were right. They might have been at this point. Most of those guys, by the way, the inner circle, were from Goldman Sachs.
Of course.
And they'd already made their fortune.
Right.
And boy, oh boy, man, it was pretty wild. That's where the Occupy Wall Street thing came out, and all that.
Brian, right? In crypto, what do they always say? Buy the dip, right? I would love to have bought the dip on this thing, but the truth is I'd invested a lot of money and I didn't have a lot to throw in more into the market. It's where I was at that moment, right? If I'm a bank, I can buy all these houses. They crash. I can keep buying because there's more money coming in. They don't have to play by the same rules.
That's right.
And now what we're going to see is that we're going to start seeing them, if they own a big chunks of land, big chunks of neighborhoods, they can affect the pricing. They can buy. So in Bitcoin, this whole thing was that the Bitcoin had gone down because the price of Bitcoin gone down because all of these Bitcoin whales were mad at this one Bitcoin whale and they wanted him out of the market. So they divested and made it crash. Well, what if they want your house? What if the bank wants the last 3 houses on that neighborhood and they would sell? Oh, you won't sell? Guess what? The fucking price of your house just fucking plummeted. Yeah, it's going to crash. Your house is worth
this
nothing.
goes back to why government cannot be this powerful. Did you see what my dad said at 81 years old and on his 81st birthday? Bring up my Instagram. I posted. He said this on Big and Hungry. This is a guy who was a banker. This is a guy who spent a lot of time in government with government officials. This is a guy who spent a lot of time at the top of the investment banking world. Listen to what he has to say at 81 years old. Now that he's retired, he's got no dog in this fight. And I thought this was really kind of simple and profound. I think you'll like it. Because watch.
What do you see as the biggest threat to society in America right now?
The Leviathan, the growth of government. Government is ordering you to do things. And make no mistake, when government passes a law, especially at the central level, and they said, okay, now you all have to do this. If you decide you're not going to do that, eventually they're going to send people with guns to your house. That's not the way this society was originated. It's not the way it developed, and it's not the way it became what it is.
Well, that's right. And people who agree with that side of the argument are fine with it until another government gets in there.
Now they have all that residual power that was created by the first one.
Exactly. You see that?
Yeah.
And that's as simple to me as that makes all the sense in the world.